On Thanksgiving, my uncle blocked the door. You're not family. So I walked away without a word, then sent one message that turned their entire dinner upside down. My name is Oliver, I'm 28, and for most of my life, I've been the invisible one in my family. You know, the one people forget to text, the one left out of group photos, the one they remember when they need a ride or a favor, but never when it actually matters. I grew up with a mom who always had a sharp tongue and a selective memory. Somehow she remembered every mistake I made, but forgot every award every time I helped her every birthday card I saved up for. I have a sister, Ava, who learned early on that playing perfect got her everything. She smiled, curtsied, got good grades, and got treated like royalty. I was the opposite. Quiet, skeptical, too blunt for my own good. That didn't sit well with our family culture, where smiles were currency and truth was a nuisance. For years, I tried to earn my place. I brought pies to dinners. I wasn't invited to gifts to birthdays where no one noticed me arriving, and compliments to relatives who never said my name correctly. I played along at first thinking if I just tried hard enough, they'd eventually see me. But by the time I hit 25, the veil had lifted. I realized my efforts didn't change a thing. My place at the table was never going to be permanent. Still, there's a certain kind of ache that doesn't fully go away no matter how logically you understand it. So when Thanksgiving rolled around last year, I debated whether to go. My cousin Maya was the only person in that entire web of relatives who genuinely treated me like a human being. She was younger by 2 years, but more emotionally mature than half the adults in the room. We'd grown closer over the years, DMs, occasional late-night calls, honest check-ins. So when she texted me the day before Thanksgiving saying, "You better show up, you know I saved you a spot," I caved. I figured maybe, if only for her, it was worth showing up again. I drove the 40 minutes out to my uncle's house where Thanksgiving was always hosted. Classic suburbia manicured lawn, tacky inflatable turkey in the front yard, and that unmistakable scent of butter, spices, and tension wafting out the open windows. I parked in my usual spot 3 houses down because my uncle's driveway was always full when I came late. As I walked up the front steps with a bottle of wine, I knew no one would touch. I saw them through the screen door. My mom, my aunt, my sister, my uncle laughing, talking, smiling like it was a photo shoot for Dysfunctional Families Anonymous. I didn't expect a parade or even a hello. But what happened next wasn't just cold, it was deliberate. As I reached for the doorknob, the door opened just a crack. And there was my Uncle Ron, filling the frame like a human roadblock. He didn't greet me, didn't smile. He just looked at me with that smug little twitch in his mouth and said, "You're not family anymore, Oliver. You need to leave." At first I thought he was joking. I actually laughed, expecting the punchline, but he didn't move. Behind him I saw my mom pass 2 plates across the table, one of them with the name card I recognized. "Mine." She handed it laughing to Ava's boyfriend, a guy I'd only met twice. They clinked glasses. My seat was filled before I even got a foot in the door. "I'm serious," Uncle Ron added. "You showing up just causes tension." I blinked. "Causes tension," I repeated. "I haven't even walked in yet." He gave a mock sympathetic shrug. "Let's not make this worse than it needs to be. Just head home. Okay?" I looked over his shoulder, locking eyes with my mom. She didn't flinch, didn't call him off. She just raised an eyebrow and took a sip of her wine like she was watching a mildly interesting TV show. For a moment I thought about fighting back, raising my voice, making a scene. But I didn't. Instead I did something that caught even me off guard. I nodded calmly, quietly. I stepped back. I walked down those steps with the same bottle of wine still in my hand, got in my car, and drove 2 blocks before pulling over. My hands were shaking, not with rage, but with something colder, something more final, because I'd seen all I needed to see. I wasn't family to them. I was a placeholder, a joke, a scapegoat when they needed someone to criticize, and an empty chair when they needed a space filler. But here's the thing. I had something they didn't know about. Months ago, I'd been slowly preparing for the moment I stopped trying. Something Maya and I had talked about more than once over whispered calls and shared stories of being left out, overlooked, dismissed. She wasn't as loud about it, but she saw it too. The hypocrisy, the favoritism, the manipulation that danced beneath every family gathering. She once told me, if we ever wanted to break the illusion, all it would take is one spark. So I picked up my phone, opened the saved message. It had taken me weeks to write, to time it just right. It wasn't a rant or a guilt trip or some long-winded attempt at closure. It was just the truth laid bare, sent to a very select group of people in that house. And I had sent. 5 minutes later, as I sat parked at the corner of their street, engine idling, I watched through the rear view mirror. The front door opened. First it was Maya storming out, face red with anger. Then my cousin Daniel, then his girlfriend, then my aunt's best friend, the one who always brought dessert and had a soft spot for me. One by one, they left. I couldn't hear the words being shouted inside, but I could guess. The illusion was cracking, and that was just the beginning. Maya was the first to call. I saw her name flash across my screen before I even pulled out of my spot. I picked up heart pounding not because I was nervous, but because I hadn't expected it to unravel this fast. Oliver. She snapped, not even waiting for me to speak. What did you just do? I paused. You read it. Of course I read it. So did everyone else. Uncle Ron's face turned purple. Your mom tried to play dumb. And Ava just stood there frozen like she didn't know what planet she was on. I could hear the wind rushing past her phone. She was walking fast, maybe pacing, maybe on her way to her car. Maya was quiet for a second, and when she spoke again, her voice had dropped. Why didn't you tell me you were recording them? That was the thing. A few months back, after years of being talked down to, dismissed, and lied about behind my back, I'd started collecting receipts. Not out of paranoia, but because I was tired of gaslighting. I'd record casual conversations, save texts, take screenshots. I had video clips of my mom telling Ava she should just take the credit for something I'd done. A voice memo of Uncle Ron saying I only showed up to family events for handouts, even though I never once asked for anything. And maybe the worst of them all, an audio recording from my birthday the year before when they forgot I existed. Even though I had been sitting right there at the table, that Thanksgiving message I sent, it wasn't just a note. It was a compilation. I had stitched together the greatest hits of family hypocrisy into a 5-minute clip. It had context timestamps and just enough raw silence between the insults to let it all sink in. I sent it to 7 people. Maya Daniel, my Aunt Laura, my cousin's fiancé, my mom's sister, who had always been on the fence, and 2 family friends who'd always believed the curated version of the family that my mother and Uncle Ron sold like gospel. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you caught in the middle, I said quietly. Maya scoffed. I'm already in the middle, but I'm glad you did it. I exhaled, my grip on the steering wheel finally loosening. Are you okay? I will be. I'm done with them. Click. I sat there in the silence of my car, staring out the windshield, watching as more cars began pulling away from the house. A few people stood on the porch looking confused. My mom's voice rose above them all. She was shouting something I couldn't make out, but I didn't need to hear the words. I'd heard versions of them my entire life. The next call came from Aunt Laura. Oliver, she said, breathless. Where are you? I debated lying. Down the street. Stay there. I'm coming. She hung up, and true to her word, 5 minutes later she climbed into my passenger seat. Her eyes were wide, but not with anger. More like someone who had just stumbled into a crime scene she wasn't expecting to find. I listened to everything. She said twice. I said nothing. I never knew it was that bad. I mean, I knew they were cruel sometimes. I just didn't realize how calculated it all was. I looked over at her. You really didn't know. She winced. I saw pieces, but your mom always made it seem like you were the problem. She said you were dramatic, that you twisted things. I didn't want to believe she'd lie. She didn't lie, I said softly. She edited. Aunt Laura stared at the dashboard. This is going to rip the family apart. Then maybe it was already broken, I said. That evening I went home to a flood of messages. Some angry, some apologetic, a few confused. But what stood out the most was the silence from the people who should have said something. My mom, Ava, and Uncle Ron. Not one of them reached out, not even a call, not a single word. Until the next morning, that's when I saw the post. My mother, in her usual performative style, had posted a long status on Facebook about betrayal, misunderstanding, and private matters being aired for attention. She never said my name, but the comments made it clear who she was talking about. People offered sympathy, called me disrespectful, said things like, "You raised him better than that girl." But something unexpected happened in the thread. Maya commented, "So did Daniel." Then Aunt Laura. One by one, people began pushing back. They called out the manipulation, the double standards, even sharing their own stories of being mistreated or lied to. The thread exploded. Some relatives deleted their comments. A few blocked me outright, but the tide had shifted. For once, I wasn't alone. For once, people saw it too. That weekend, I got a message request from Ava's boyfriend. It said, "I didn't know they were like that. I'm sorry. If I'd known what I was taking part in, I would have never sat in your chair." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The message had already been sent, and not just the one in the group chat. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a ghost in my own story. I felt like the author. And that story, it wasn't finished yet. The Sunday after Thanksgiving, I got a knock at my door. I live in a quiet part of town. Nothing fancy, just a modest apartment above a bakery that smells like cinnamon rolls every morning. It's peaceful quiet, nothing like the house I grew up in, where every door slam felt like a gunshot, and every holiday dinner was a performance for the neighbors. I wasn't expecting visitors. Most of my friends had already texted me after the video went around, some supportive, some shocked. Maya had been calling me daily, but I wasn't prepared to open the door and see my dad. We hadn't spoken in almost a year. He looked older than I remembered, gray creeping further into his beard, that familiar leather jacket, a little more worn. He didn't smile, just stood there, hands in his pockets, rocking slightly on his heels, like he didn't know what to say. Hi, he finally muttered. Didn't expect to see you, I said, stepping aside but not exactly welcoming him in. He hesitated, then walked in. Anyway, I watched him scan the apartment clean, quiet, filled with small things that made me happy. The records on the shelf, the stack of books I actually had time to read now, the framed photo of Maya and me from the one Thanksgiving we snuck out and got burgers instead of dealing with the family circus. I saw the video, he said, or clips of it. Your aunt sent it to me. I waited. He sat down on the edge of my couch, looking at the floor like it held the answers he didn't know how to ask for. Your mom, she's been losing her mind over this. Says you set her up. Says you twisted everything. I leaned against the counter. Did I? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he rubbed the bridge of his nose like he was trying to press the tension out through his skin. I don't know, Oliver. I mean, I knew things were bad between you two, but hearing it like that, it was hard to listen to. I folded my arms. Hard for who he looked up for me. Because it made me realize I let it happen for years. And there it was. The first real sentence my father had ever said that felt like a mirror instead of a dismissal. I didn't say anything. I didn't trust myself to speak yet. He shifted on the couch. You remember when you were 13 and your mom threw out your art portfolio? I nodded slowly. That day had stayed with me. Months of work tossed into the trash because I'd got an A/B in science. Yeah. She told me you'd drawn something disrespectful. I drew a cartoon of her yelling at me. That was it. He let out a dry laugh. I believed her, never even asked to see it. That was the pattern, I said, and I was surprised at how steady my voice was. She'd say something. You'd nod. Ava would play along and I'd be left trying to figure out if I was crazy or just not worth the truth. He looked like he wanted to argue, but he didn't. Instead, he sat there, nodding slightly, letting the silence stretch. I can't fix what happened, he said eventually. But I wanted you to know. I see it now. I wish I'd said something sooner. I wish I'd stepped in. I believed he meant it. I really did. But part of me also knew that his regret didn't undo years of complicity. He hadn't been cruel, but he'd been silent. And sometimes silence is just a different kind of wound. I appreciate you saying that, I said, but I don't know what you want from me. He exhaled. I don't know either. I guess I wanted to see how you're doing. I'm doing better, I said truthfully. Now that I'm out of it, now that I've stopped pretending they'll change. He nodded again. They're planning damage control. Of course they are. They think if they just wait it out, people will move on. I raised an eyebrow. And will they? He looked tired. Some already have. Some are scared to pick sides, but a few. They're furious, especially with what you said about the money. Oh, that part. See what I hadn't mentioned to anyone outside? That original message was the money trail. I had been giving quiet financial support to several family members for years. Rent car repairs, even a small loan to Ava once when she said her boyfriend was abusive and she needed to leave. I never asked for it back, never told anyone. I did it because I thought maybe it would earn me a place in the family again. That stopped 3 months ago. I didn't make a scene about it. I just started redirecting my help toward Maya, toward friends, toward people who actually treated me like a person. The video I sent out included a note at the end. This is why I stopped paying for your lives. Apparently that stung more than the audio clips. They're saying you're punishing them, my dad said. They punished themselves, I replied. I just stopped rewarding it. He didn't argue. After a while, he stood. I should go. I just wanted you to know you were right about all of it. He started toward the door, then paused. If there's ever a way back for us, I hope you'll let me take it. And then he left. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just stood there in the quiet, wondering how long it would take for the next wave to hit because I knew the family wasn't done yet. My mom didn't let go of power that easily. Ava never handled humiliation well, and Thanksgiving might have been the spark, but Christmas was around the corner. And if they thought they could pretend nothing had changed, they were about to be reminded. I hadn't even started yet. By the time December rolled around, the silence was deafening. The group chat for family Christmas plans that usually lit up with potluck assignments and recycled memes from our Aunt Margie was unusually quiet. The last message in there was Moss. Let me know when you all are ready to take some accountability. No one responded. No, haha reactions, no snide remarks, just a vacuum of guilt pretending to be peace. I wasn't invited, of course. Not that I needed the invite. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was missing something. I didn't need to force a smile through another dinner where Ava's career was celebrated like a Nobel Prize and mine was ignored. I didn't need to listen to my mom laugh at jokes about me or hear Uncle Ron say things like, Over's always been sensitive like I was some malfunctioning appliance. I was free now, free from obligation, from expectation, from the heavy weight of being the family's emotional punching bag, but I wasn't done. Not yet. See, the recording I sent out at Thanksgiving was just the beginning. It had shaken their image-forced conversations they didn't want to have. but it hadn't truly forced them to change. They were hiding now, licking their wounds, waiting for the drama to pass. I could feel it, that smug, simmering belief that eventually I'd fade from memory and they'd reclaim the narrative. So I made sure they couldn't. I started with the money. Quietly, methodically, and without warning, I called in the favors, that $3,000 loan to Ava. I sent her a formal letter through my lawyer reminding her that while I had originally treated it as a gift, the recent revelation of her lies about escaping an abusive relationship voided that understanding. She was still with the guy, by the way. He showed up to Thanksgiving in my seat laughing with my mom. I gave her 60 days to repay. No threats, no interest, just a paper trail. I canceled the recurring bank transfer that had been covering part of Uncle Ron's property tax. He never asked for help directly. He was too proud for that. But a few years ago, he hinted at tough times and I stepped in. Every November, like clockwork, I'd send the amount due. Not this year. On December 3rd, his bank declined the payment request. My mom, though, she was the biggest one. For 5 years, I'd been covering the lease on her car. She never thanked me, not once. It was expected. She made it clear that as her son, it was my duty. I let it slide for too long. She didn't know the car was still in my name. On December 10th, I repossessed it. The phone calls came in like fireworks. First Ava, shrill and furious, then Uncle Ron trying to reason with me like I was some angry child, and finally my mother. She didn't yell, she didn't cry. She just called and said, "So this is who you really are?" And I replied, "No, this is who you made me become." Click. Christmas Eve came. I didn't sit alone. I spent it with Maya and a few of our mutual friends. We made dinner together in her apartment, lit candles, played board games, and exchanged gifts that didn't need to impress anyone. It was the warmest holiday I'd had in years. Around midnight, Maya poured us each a glass of wine and sat beside me on the floor, pulling a blanket over our legs. "They called me," she said softly. "Let me guess," I said. "Damage control." She nodded. "Your mom said I was choosing sides, that I was tearing the family apart." "You are," I said. "The part that needed to be torn down." She leaned her head on my shoulder. She also said something else, that she was going to set the record straight. I sighed. Of course she is. The next morning, I found out what she meant. My mom wrote a long post on Facebook. Another performance, another attempt to flip the script. She talked about how families go through hard times, how sometimes private pain becomes public, and how some members are easily manipulated by false narratives. It was a masterclass in polished denial. No names, no specifics, just enough ambiguity to draw sympathy from people who only knew the version of her she'd curated for years. I didn't respond. I didn't comment. I didn't need to, because by then the truth was already spreading on its own. Aunt Laura posted her own status, short but pointed. Sometimes the only way to fix a broken family is to stop pretending it's not broken. Proud of you, Oliver. Daniel posted a screenshot of one of the texts my mom had sent him years ago, badmouthing me, right after I helped him pay for college books. The caption was simple. We all saw it. We just didn't want to admit it. More and more people, cousins, old family friends, even one of Ava's college roommates, began commenting, messaging, reaching out. People I hadn't spoken to in years were apologizing, telling me they'd noticed things but didn't know how deep it went. It was like lifting the lid off a pressure cooker. Everyone had stories, everyone had scars, and now they weren't afraid to share them. A week after Christmas, I got a letter in the mail handwritten from my mom. It wasn't an apology, it was a warning. She said I was destroying the family's reputation, that I was making enemies I couldn't afford, that there were consequences to embarrassing people in public. It read like the final act of someone who had lost control and didn't know how else to claw it back. I folded the letter once and dropped it in the trash. I didn't need to fight her anymore. The truth was winning on its own. By the time New Year's Eve rolled around, the family had split into two camps. There were the ones who clung to the old ways, defending my mom, pretending the recordings were taken out of context, dismissing every call out as drama. And then there were the ones who finally opened their eyes. They started organizing their own gatherings. Maya hosted a brunch in January and invited everyone she trusted. Over 20 people showed up. Uncle Ron wasn't one of them. Neither was Ava. Neither was my mother. I've had to grieve in a way. Not just the loss of a family I never truly had, but the version of me that kept waiting for their love to come wrapped in approval. I let that version die. Buried him with the guilt, the people-pleasing, the endless ache for validation. Now, I'm living. I started writing again, something I hadn't done since high school. I launched a small freelance business. Maya and I are closer than ever, and every so often someone reaches out. Someone who saw what happened, who recognized their own family in my story, who says, "Thank you for saying something, I felt this way for years." So if you're reading this and thinking about the family members who mock you, who use your love like a leash, who only call when they need something, listen to me. You don't have to stay in that house just because your name is on the mailbox. You don't owe anyone your silence to keep the peace they never gave you. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stand at the front door. They slammed in your face, turn around, and never look back. I didn't lose a family, I shed one. And in the quiet that followed, I finally heard my own voice again. Clear, unapologetic,